G'day again, Australians. This is the part 2 of our Australian constitutional history, 1901 to 2020. Just want to quickly ask you to do two things. First of all, please watch all of these videos because you do miss out on important information. I know sometimes they go a little bit longer than what you'd like, but you can actually save them, download them, or come back to them and watch them again. So that's one thing. So watch them all. And the other thing is, please subscribe to the channel because these videos will come out on irregular basis. So if you subscribe to the channel, click the bell symbol, you'll be notified when a new video comes out, and then you can either choose to watch it later through the options, or you can watch it straight away. All right, just a little recap on what we talked about in part 1. 1901, obviously, Federation, our lawful Commonwealth of Australia Constitution Act, 1901 was gazetted, proclaimed, and became law in Australia on the 1st of January 1901. Then we talked about 1931, which is the Statute of Westminster, and all of this will be in, as I said, in a hard copy. And then we went on to 1942, where we talked about the extraterritorial powers of the Parliament, but only being able to be used in a constitutional format. In other words, they couldn't create anything or agree to anything or enter into anything unless it conforms with our 1901 Constitution Act. All right, so just remember that. And then we went on to 1973, where the Whitlam government decided to create a corporation called the Australian Government, and they took out those three words, of the Commonwealth, right? Of the Commonwealth, and they inserted of Australia, which is unlawful. Now that extraterritorial power does not allow them to do that, because that changes completely the purpose of our Commonwealth of Australia Constitution. Okay, and then we finished on that. And basically what we were saying was the Statute of Westminster gave the Parliament those extraterritorial powers. However, they could only use those powers within the confines of our lawful constitution. Okay, so part 2. Now, our research indicates that instead of upholding and adhering to our Commonwealth of Australia constitutional rule of law, our treasonous politicians decided to start to use code law, which is dispute resolution. It's nothing to do with a court. It's more of a tribunal where they sit in a quorum and they decide an outcome. Okay, so there's no judicial system whatsoever. It's a code law, not a rule of law. Okay, so we need to consider the two things that Whitlam did in 1973. The Commonwealth of Australia was suspended by Whitlam, and the Australian government began operating in administration in the same year, 1973. Now, what happens in everything that has come out of the parliaments since Whitlam put the Australian government in as administrator is unlawful, constitutionally unlawful. So nothing will stand up underneath our lawful constitution. So that means that once we restore our lawful constitution, rescind, reverse, do whatever we need to do to get back to a time when we were actually constitutionally lawful. Okay, so you and I and all Australians have no authority in their corporate system. Okay, it obviously it was too obvious to actually see, and this is called ultra vires, okay? And that means acting or done beyond one's legal power of authority. So it was too obvious. It was hiding in plain sight what they were doing, but we didn't see it, all right? And the reason we know that we didn't see it is because in 1974 we trotted off to an election, which was an election of the Australian government. We didn't even realise that it wasn't an election of the Commonwealth of Australia. Okay, so we didn't even know. So we were, I suppose, bamboozled by the bullshit of the politicians. Now, in our Commonwealth, you were a shareholder, okay, part of the Commonwealth, entitled to a part of the Commonwealth. In the Australian government, and I always have trouble with this word, usufruct. All right, usufruct. All right, it's the legal right of using and enjoying fruits and profits of something belonging to another person. You can never own it, and you cannot change it without their permission. So basically, they took from you your Commonwealth, and they rented it back to you at a price. And that's all the contracts and agreements we talked about. Every single part of your life, my life, and the life of all the people in Australia is now by contract and agreement. All right? In the Commonwealth, we didn't need that because it was Commonwealth. And everything happened according to the rule of law. Okay? There was no dispute resolution. If you broke the law, you went to court, you paid the price. Now, it's not a court, it's a quorum. And that means that they sit as an administrator, and they dispute resolve. Okay, so it's a dispute against a contract. Now, remember these two words: implied consent. We'll come back to that in a second. So, in our Commonwealth, you had a voice through your elected representatives. Government at the will of the Australian people. Now, at the will of the Australian people, that doesn't exist anymore under the corporation, because it's at the will of the corporation. Okay, at the will of the political party, also a corporation. At the will of the Electoral Commission, also a corporation. So nothing is at the will of the people anymore, even though they let you vote in their board of directors elections under the Australian government. Okay, in the Australian government, you do not have a voice because your elected representatives are not your elected representatives. They are elected representatives of the corporation. Okay, so you're actually contributing implied consent by voting for these people, and you are putting them in, giving them implied consent to do to us what they've been doing for decades, at least since the 1973. So they are the elected representatives are simply a part of a corporate board of directors of extraterritorial board operating as a private corporation called the Australian government. Okay, so it was created by extraterritorial power given to the Parliament under the Westminster Statute. Now, that's not a lawful thing. The Westminster Statute took away a lot of the powers, but still gave us our lawful constitution. So our corporations that pose as our governments and electoral systems have actually taken it one step further, and they've actually gone and taken our lawful constitution, set it aside, and recreated their own constitution by changing the annotations. This is the green copy I'm talking about, which is unlawful. They've changed the annotations to now give them sovereignty as a parliament. There is no sovereignty as a parliament, okay? Because before our lawful constitution was enacted, all of those laws where the parliament was sovereign were erased, and our constitution came in giving us government at our will. Okay. So a lot of people say, why a private company? You and I and everyone else in the Commonwealth did not have a part in setting it up. Okay, it's a private company, not a public company. It's a private company. So that means that they own it, lock, stock and barrel, and their corporations are all registered in the USA. Now, people say, so what? Because in the USA you need to have a registered company to deal with the United States. That's true, but not a government. You don't. We have particular organisations that deal with other countries, which are corporations, which is also to protect against, to give them an indemnity, but not our government. Our government isn't a corporation. It's a Commonwealth constitutional government. That's what it's supposed to be, and Parliament. Okay, so we got no shares. So when people demand the Australian government operate to our constitution, they don't, because our Commonwealth of Australia constitution is not their rule book. Their rule book is code of law, not rule of law. So it's code law, not rule of law. Okay, so remember the difference between the Maroon Book and the Green Book is the annotations have been changed in the Green Book to give sovereignty to the Parliament, which was never intended by the framers of our Constitution. And Quick and Garran were two of the framers of our Constitution. That's why their annotated version, the Maroon version, was accepted as a lawful understanding or layman's understanding of our our Lawful Commonwealth of Australia Constitution Act of 1901. So the new annotations, who knows who wrote those, but they've been changed to make it seem like they're the same. Remember what I said? In plain sight. There you go. And implied consent. Okay, moving along. So, how did we give the government of Australia, the Commonwealth of Australia, to the Australian government? And as I said, in that 1974 election, we went off and we went to an election for the Australian government, and we elected the directors of the Australian government and didn't even know that it wasn't a Commonwealth of Australia election. That's how we did it. All right, that's basically all we're going to cover in these sections. I know we've missed out very important parts of the unlawful changes, including in our legal system and things, but that's a whole different other story, which we'll get to at some stage down the track when Wayne records his Wayne, Dick and Richard record the series of educational, which goes into every single detail from 1901 to 2020, where we are now. And this was just an overview to give you an understanding of that. And, you know, like the other thing that we always mention is the Australia Act of 1986, which was enacted under the Queen of Australia. Now, the Queen of Australia does not exist. ScoMo swore his oath of office as a Prime Minister to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II Magistra, or Managera, or whatever you want to call it. I'll have a look at the clip, as the Queen of Australia. No, you can't. That makes it unlawful. If he had sworn his oath to Queen Elizabeth II, her heirs and successors according to law, that's a lawful oath. But he didn't. He swore to Queen Elizabeth II, Queen of Australia. Okay? It's a fictitious entity. So that's all I got today. Now, remember that you can ask any questions. You need to get onto these links that we put on the video so you can go and hook up with our website, which is interactive. It's got a forum on there where you can ask questions and get answered. Be patient, because we've got lots of work going on at the moment. We've got our Facebook group and our Facebook page. Get onto that as well. We've also got our Telegram, which was put up last night. Thank you to those almost 2,000 people that have joined our Telegram group. And we've got our encrypted emails, and obviously we want you to enroll with our Lawful Rebellion Aussie Patriots Roll, because that is the key to the will of the people, the bona fide will of the people, to be presented when our case is heard by the House of Lords, and it will be heard because it's been acknowledged as being received, and the matter is being looked at as we speak. Okay. I love this country. There's the red duster. Get yourself one. Get yourself a copy of the Constitution. If the only thing that you ever do is get yourself a little book like this, or just download. That's the Act. You can download that. We send it to you when you enroll, so you have all the links and everything like that. So God bless Australians and Australia, and advance Australia Fair. See you later.